in Central Oregon, hiking a day hike, one of my two favorite sections of this 24-mile epic loop. Most commonly done as a backpacking loop, but I like to cherry pick the premium sections as day hikes, since I only live like an hour and 20 minutes away here in Central Oregon. Today is September 9th, 2022. So I started at Santiam Pass, Pacific Crest Trailhead, stayed left at the initial junction, 0.3 miles in, stayed on PCT instead of turning right to Old Summit. We'll say as far as Old Summit going to Square Lake and Booth Lake, I do have videos of that available as well. That is worth doing. But I have opted to stay left today, do a little bit longer of a hike, doing 14 miles today, 1,600 foot elevation gain. Essentially going to the high point of the entire 24-mile loop, which I think yields the money shot, the premium view of Three Finger Jack on this whole 24-mile loop. This is a day hike I have done before, so I do know the area. I've done it a few times actually. So not uncharted territory for me, but nonetheless quite beautiful, and I always enjoy coming here. A large amount of this hike is exposed. As I'm coming up to a few deer. Figured out the source of that scat I saw earlier. Oh, look at that. That is cool. Two deer hanging out. And I found a couple piles of scat at the beginning of the trail, and I figured it was probably deer scat. No way a bear is going to be that close to the trailhead with the sound of the cars in the background. So it was indeed deer. Two of them scampering along. Kind of interesting the way they've made this trail. I would be complimentary towards it. It's kind of a loose sand. Makes it pretty pleasant to walk on. You'd be surprised what an impact hiking on loose sand is versus just the rock. Now granted, there's other parts of this loop that are higher up in the proper forest that are just rock, but the sand has less shock absorption on your knees and your legs as far as your fatigue. You're doing a 14-miler like I am today. Those little things add up as far as your overall fatigue of your hike. So walking on the sand is helping me not fatigue my legs prematurely. It is cumulative effect, so I appreciate that. Got some interesting logs built into the trail as like steps. So this is the Mount Jefferson Wilderness. I always feel a little bad for my boy Three Finger Jack, because this is the Three Finger Jack Loop. We're in the Mount Jefferson Wilderness. He doesn't even get his own wilderness named after him. Granted, Jefferson's like 10,500 feet peak, and Three Finger Jack, I want to say, is about 7,800, give or take. So Mount Jefferson is the most prominent mountain in this section, but they named the entire area around it Mount Jefferson Wilderness. It's a vast area encompassing the area around Three Finger Jack, so doesn't even get his own wilderness. We are in what I consider to be a classic burnout zone. This is what much of the topography around the Three Finger Jack 24-mile loop is like. It's not what the whole thing's like. It does have some diverse ecological zones that are noteworthy, but a good chunk of it is hiking through burnouts like this. I always like this Humpo Rock, we'll call it Humpo Rock. I don't think it has a name. Maybe it does. I'm unaware. Feels like a prominent landmark, but in the scheme of things, it's a pretty minor humble rock. We're coming up to a junction shortly. They say this wind feels great. As long as it's not dangerous, asterisks. I'll take a windy day over a calm day quite often. Because the feel of the wind kind of cuts some of the temperature. I think I've been fortunate to time this optimally. September 9th, 2022, below 48, high of 72. 72 will be later in the day. I'll be back to my car long before that. So probably in the high 40s now, which is very comfortable. Probably won't experience any higher than the mid 60s. So hiking 40s, 50s, 60s is pretty grand. Don't have to deal with the 70s and 80s. This is a trail junction. Santiam Lake, that way. I've been over there before. That takes you over to like the Duffy Lake area. Santiam Lake and Duffy Lake. I'm gonna be completely honest, because I don't know how to roll any other way. I'm not a big fan of Santiam Lake as far as the beauty of it. It's just kind of a grassy pond, which is not my favorite type of lake. So I don't think Santiam Pass is very impressive. I'm sorry, Santiam Lake is very impressive. Duffy Lake I was slightly disappointed by. I mean, if you haven't explored the area, it's probably worth doing once. Just kind of see some old growth forest and a smattering of lakes. But ultimately, I did that hike and I was a little underwhelmed by the area in comparison to a lot of the other more jaw-dropping, eye-catching beauties of Central Oregon. We've got some grade A premium world-class hiking in Central Oregon. So when you go to the kind of the second tier hikes, they're a lot less impressive. So my personal opinion, Duffy Lake, Santiam Lake, that area is not grade A. So as I said, I did it once and that was enough for me. I probably don't plan on going back there. Probably the best lake on this 24-mile loop that we're currently on is Wasco Lake. I do have some videos of Wasco Lake shoreline and the overlook. It's kind of interesting because if you do the Northeast Quadrant, you do the Canyon Creek Meadows, the Cirque area, which I recommend doing. Gotta be very careful because it can be dangerous. Turquoise Cirque, kind of tucked into the folds of Three Finger Jack. I have videos of that as well. You do that, and you cut over to Wasco Lake. You go above, I want to say Minto Pass. There's a great viewpoint area where you stand over Wasco Lake, and if you can get a windy day, you can see the wind cutting across the sparkly blue sapphire lake. I have videos of that as well. That's pretty epic. So Wasco Lake's definitely the best lake around this 24-mile loop, my humble opinion. We will not be exploring that edge today. Today we will be getting the best mountain view, in my opinion, on the entire loop, which is why I love doing this hike. It's a 7-mile out, pretty much elevation gain the entire way. It's only 1,600 feet, so that's not bad, pretty well graded. We'll get to our lookout. It's kind of on the central west side of the loop, if you're looking at like the AllTrails map. Central west side, right before the switchbacks. That point is, to me, the best viewpoint of Three Finger Jack of the entire 24-mile loop. So I view that as the natural turnaround point. You're also at the top of some switchbacks, so it doesn't make sense to go down the switchbacks, just turn around and go right back up them, kind of adding elevation gain for no reason to your hike. So if you're looking for an ambitious day hike, Three Finger Jack, I think you can, my personal opinion, you can break down Three Finger Jack as day hikes into 3. I'll back up a little bit and say most people do it as a backpacking trip. If I was out of state, I would do it as a backpacking trip, 24-mile loop, 1, 2, or 3 nights, depending on how aggressive you want to be. But since I only live like an hour 20 away, I choose to day hike it. I That way I don't have to carry a heavy backpack and be more nimble and sleep in my bed at night. Warm, cozy bed. So I would break it into 3 hikes. Santiam Pass, Pacific Crest Trailhead, which we're doing today, to the PCT, to the Money Lookout spot. It's about 14 miles and about 1,600 foot elevation gain. That's one of the premium hikes. Could do the same Santiam Pass, Pacific Crest Trail, and hang right to Square Lake and Booth Lake. Got videos of that. You can do that about 10 miles before you hit the Manzanita section on the east, which I would turn around at because that isn't very beautiful. That's kind of considered the worst section of the 24-mile loop, like the eastern side, northeastern side, south of Jack Lake, but north of Booth Lake. That's kind of the worst section of the loop. It's also the most dangerous section because there's no water, and people may not appreciate that there's no water source, and if they're going at a hot time of day, it could be downright dangerous if you're traversing miles and miles in exposed trail. So you gotta, if you're doing the loop as a backpack, you gotta watch your water management for that. But the third hike is it's recreation.gov permit one. It's the only one of the 3 that requires recreation.gov permit. Jack Lake, Canyon Creek Meadows. Climb up and look at the Cirque. Be careful. Go over to Wasco. I like to go up into Pass, overlook Wasco. Keep going down to PCT as far as your heart's content. A lot of times I'll do 14 to 17 miles. Turn around maybe below the switchbacks of the mountain viewpoint we're looking at today. So those are your 3 epic day hikes of Three Finger Jack. As we continue to hike along, the sun is out. Today is September 9th, 2022. Doing 14 miles as an out and back with 1,600 foot elevation gain. I'd say that's probably in the hard range of distance, probably the moderate range of elevation. It's pretty well graded and spread across 7 miles going up. So elevation isn't bad on this one. I'd say it's very comfortable. Definitely not a stair climber, lung burner type hike that some other more uphill slogs can be. Today is a Friday, September 9th, 2022, and I think it's going to be pretty low traffic today as far as the number of hikers. There's a storm coming in tonight. It's already a little windy now. Look at that beautiful sun, and so I don't anticipate a lot of foot traffic, which is good for me. I like the solitude and the secluded feel. Hiking through the burnout section with some repopulated alpine growth. I believe we are officially in the alpine section. The trail starts at 4,800 and our high point 6,400, but the threshold for the alpine is 5,000. You ever hear people talk about alpine and subalpine? Talking about 5,000 elevation or lower. Subalpine's lower. So we started at 4,800, but we're going up. So I think we have crossed the 5,000 by now. This means we are technically in an alpine zone. A lot of times the ecological footprint's a dead giveaway. If you see a lot of pines and hemlocks, mountain hemlocks and spruces, blue spruces, then that's typically a dead giveaway. You're in the alpine zone. I call those the alpine tree, the alpine mix of tree species. Something pretty hauntingly beautiful about kind of the sun on these wispy wheat section or whatever the heck this is. Very beautiful. See more groves of alpine mix. Very popular backpacking loop. Probably the second best backpacking loop in Central Oregon, behind Broken Top Loop. There's lots of backcountry campsites scattered around the trail, up and down the trail. A lot of times you want to camp near a lake for obvious reasons, for water, but there are pretty epic backcountry sites all around this area that are admittedly spaced out. One in particular I'm thinking of, right at the base of Mount Hood. I'm sorry, Big Finger Jack. So many mountains in Central Oregon. Easy to get it mixed up. Ooh, I love this tree. It's prominent. It's pretty epic. Gosh, that's beautiful. Like a massive mountain hemlock. Look at that. That is beautiful. Here we got our friend, a spruce. His friend, another spruce. Pretty impressive. Now we got some pines. I'm a big believer in the idea that you enjoy every step of the hike. Like if you gain a love and appreciation for the forest, you enjoy the entire hike. Every step is joyous rather than kind of that dangled carrot destination mentality. I'm not a big fan of that, where you're only looking forward to the viewpoint at the end of any given hike, and you view the forest as just kind of like a necessary evil or intermediary. I don't think that's the right perspective. I know it's easy to fall into that perspective, but I'm not a fan. I eschew that perspective. So I think every step of this is gorgeous. The sun is beautiful, giving us light on these trees. Quite stunning and gorgeous. Look at that. That's beautiful. Something about the sun beaming through a beautiful windy forest has a ethereal feel. I think my viewpoint is, for all the thousands of years or however long human history goes back, lion's share of our history has been people living in forest areas and having to be physically connected to the land. So I think there's something primal and Darwinistic about the way a place like this makes us feel just naturally connected to it. I think that's thousands of years of evolution that has connected us to the land. So that's why, at least for me, when I come out to the forest, it just feels good. I feel like I'm tapping into something almost pre-wiring or ancient, if that makes sense. It's kind of in our DNA. I don't know if you can tell, but it's pretty darn windy. It's going to be a windy day today. Got that creepy horror movie soundtrack behind us, which I kind of dig, actually. I kind of like it. It's weird, we'll get like strong gusts of wind, and then nature will take a short reprieve, and then she'll start back up. Waves of wind. I don't know if many people view it this way, but we're used to the waves of an ocean, the waves of a lake, how they kind of come in a pattern. I've long viewed wind as the same pattern, waves of wind. Since we can't see it visually, we don't really think about it that way, but that's how I look at it. The waves of the wind. Spruce. On the right, I'm a sucker for blue spruce. I actually own some blue spruce on my property in Madras, as well as some pines. So I have a deep appreciation for these trees. The gentle wind feels very good. Still morning. We're still in the first couple miles of our 14-mile trek, so it's still early, probably in the high 40s, low 50s temperature. But very comfortable so far. But even with that, the feeling of the wind, quite refreshing. Hiking a day hike. Some little mini alpine mixed trees, spruces and hemlocks and so forth. Some of our expansive views are obscured by the smoke of the Cedar Creek fire currently raging in the Waldo area. But I think that the main views of Three Finger Jack hopefully will not be too obscured, since it's right in our area and not long range expansive view. So we'll see how Three Finger Jack is faring. Not too smoky in this section. So here's a pro tip. I always look up the AQI, the air quality index of an area before I go hiking. A, for safety, you don't want to be breathing in bad air, but B, just for view management. If it's going to be ultra smoky, then maybe it's not worth doing a hike if you can't get any of the views you normally get. So I did check the AQI of this area, and it was very low today, despite the Cedar Creek fire to the southeast. The winds are blowing the opposite direction, so I'm hoping the direct views in this area of Three Finger Jack will be optimal, since we're pretty far away from the smoke, so, many miles southeast, so we shall see. But part of wilderness adventuring is there's so many things to factor in. You got to think about temperature management, hydration management, energy management, road management as far as closures, of course snow management depending on the time of year, air quality management, a lot of different components to being a wilderness adventurer. But I think that is part of the fun. If you like managing those kind of things like I do, and it's kind of cool. Views of Three Finger Jack straight ahead. It's a little obscured by some smoke, see if that clears up a little later in the day, or if that will be a permanent fixture of our hike today. There's a storm coming in later tonight and over this weekend with what's called a red flag warning, which is like lightning. Between the lightning and the wind, it's a recipe for the creation of a lot of wildfires. So it's 2022. Earlier this season, we were actually doing pretty well here in Central Oregon on wildfires, and then we had a red flag a few days, something like a couple hundred lightning strikes in the forest, something like 80 fires created. Most of them were small and contained, but a few of them went out of control. So that's our single biggest cause of forest fires here in Central Oregon, is these red flag warnings, lightning strikes in the forest, ignite fires, and then winds accompany the storm that brought the lightning and spread them. And then boom, before you know it, you go from a in control fire season, manageable number of fires, to all hands on deck, out of control situation. So hopefully it doesn't get exacerbated this weekend, although I frankly think there's a high chance it will be. We are currently ascending a burnout zone. These cool kind of white trees. Sun is peeking through. It's still morning. Still, I'd say the earlier part of our hike. Ascending through a bit of a burnout. And we will eventually get to this top of this burnout zone, enter the forest proper. And that's when some of the more beautiful views will materialize. So there's a section where you kind of walk right at the base of Three Finger Jack, and I'm looking forward to that. And then we ultimately get, as our turnaround point, in my opinion, the most epic view of Three Finger Jack on the entire 24-mile loop, the money shot, as I like to call it. Come around a corner and you're just staring at Three Finger Jack in the face, think you can reach out and give it a high five. It's quite epic. So that's our turnaround point for this hike as we continue to hike along. Got the sun, got the wind. Pretty good situation temperature management wise. We have a low of 48, high of 72. When I first started, it was in the high 40s, and I'll be back long before the heart of the day, so I'll probably be back in the mid 60s. So 40s to 60s is pretty good hiking weather in the alpine environment we're in, so it shouldn't get too hot. Along with the wind kind of cutting the heat a little bit. Favorable conditions, I would say. junction. The sun casting its beautiful glow on this incredible Alpine burnout zone. Trees being lit up by the glow. To me, this is quintessential three-fingered jack loop, quintessential Mount Jefferson Wilderness. You've got the haunting beauty of these white burnout trees, this sea of green, new life brimming, the sun just casting its haunting glow on the entire Alpine zone. It's quite beautiful.